Hi there, business owner, and welcome to the 3Bs podcast, the place where we go beyond the numbers and dive into strategies to help you build a better business one step at a time. I'm your host, Stephanie, a multi-award-winning entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in the bookkeeping and accountancy world. If you're a business owner looking to streamline, grow, and get back the time that you deserve, you're in the right place. We're tackling real-world problems, answering tough questions, and digging deep into business building secrets in just 15 minutes each week. So are you ready to build a better business with confidence and clarity? Then let's go. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 3Bs podcast, your go-to place for 15 minutes of motivation, inspiration, and education to help you build a better business. If you're new here, welcome. This is a really special episode because, we made it. Episode 150 of the 3Bs podcast is here. And it's such a special one, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we have been here every single Thursday for 150 weeks. That's almost 3 years of consistency, helping you build better businesses. And I want to pause for a moment and take you right back to the beginning with this episode, because if you've been listening for a while, you might remember the original intro. It was simple. It was audio only. There was no video, no fancy production, just me, my phone, and a very clear intention. I didn't even have a microphone back then. I definitely didn't have a camera. I think I recorded the original audio maybe 20 times from my sofa in my living room. I think it's just proof that actually if you want to do something, you can do it. And when the 3Bs podcast started, it was just an idea. There wasn't a big plan. There wasn't a strategy deck. There wasn't a launch campaign. There wasn't any sort of idea of where this was going to get to. And I can't believe we're at 150 and we've actually still got so much more space to go. So have a listen to the intro to season 1, episode 1 of the 3Bs. Hey there, business owner. Do you want a better understanding of business finance, what your numbers actually mean, and stories of the highs and lows of business, where I'll be sharing my tips and tricks every week? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. Hello, hi there, welcome. Welcome to the very first episode of the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. I can't believe this is actually going out live. I don't know if you are the same as me, but as a business owner, I always find it really hard to keep a secret from my audience. Whether that's social media followers, email subscribers, or my one-to-one clients, when a big project like this comes along that I'm just so excited to share and I've been working on for such a long time, I find it so tough. So here it is in all its glory, and I am so excited for you to listen to it. This podcast has been created for busy business owners like you who want to understand more about the numbers on the balance sheet, love to learn, want to understand all the parts that make up a successful business, and to share the tips and tricks I've learned and the epic mistakes I've learned from along the way in short 15-minute weekly episodes. Time is precious and so valuable, so I want you to pop this on while you're walking the dog, doing the school run, or commuting to the office. Let's master this together and build brilliant businesses. See where the name came from? As you can hear from that, if you're watching on YouTube, you can probably see the colour in my cheeks, because when you first do anything, it's not great, and I'm living proof of that. And that was the best of, like I said, around 20 takes. So we all start somewhere, and there was just a feeling when the podcast started that business owners were overwhelmed, confused, drowning in noise, and I was with them too, and not getting enough clear, calm, useful information. When the podcast started, like I say, 3 years ago, we were still coming out of COVID lockdown. We were still dealing with the after effects of having to close so many of our businesses. There was a whole host of new businesses, mine included, that started because of the pandemic. And being an expert and a bookkeeper and accountant for over a decade, I knew that I could give some of my knowledge to business owners who couldn't yet afford our services or were just starting out, to help them not make the mistakes that I made. I wasn't trying to build a podcast brand. I wasn't trying to be the next big podcaster. I was trying to be helpful. I just wanted to help business owners. And as I've said on the previous episode of Ashley Leeds, he is the 15-minute guy. He was the guy who did 15-minute help you with LinkedIn. And I thought 15 minutes is perfect, because I love Stephen Bartlett. I love Diary of a CEO, but I don't sometimes have an hour, 2 hours to stay locked in, to listen to and absorb the information that's been given in those episodes. We're mums, we're parents, we're carers, we are looking after dogs and running households and running businesses. We needed something short, sharp, and actionable. And I was hoping I would be able to provide that for business owners. And if you haven't listened to this podcast before, please know that this is 150 episodes and counting of trying and improving 1% every week. I am a huge introvert. I have a lot of anxiety, and audio only was the only way I felt I could do it back in the beginning. I didn't want perfection to get in the way, and I knew that it had to be consistent. I think I'd started planning and recording the first couple of episodes around the January, and it launched on the 5th of April. I knew that visuals and editing was something I'd have to learn to do, and I think it was really important to just do the thing. I'm very much a person of, once I've got an idea, I'm going to do a thing. I am not somebody who thinks I'm going to do something in a year's time. Usually I give myself a week, sometimes 24 hours to get things done. That's the type of business owner that I am. It's the type of person that I am. So this podcast was actually something I put a lot of thought into. One, because it was really pushing me outside of my comfort zone. And two, because I needed to make sure that these episodes actually gave listeners something. They could take something away and implement it immediately into their business and start to see a difference within a week by the time the next episode came around. I wanted something human, something honest, and something that didn't shout at you. And honestly, I really wasn't ready when the first 3 episodes came out. I just started. I didn't have fancy kit. As I said, I think it was just my phone to start with. Even now, to this day, I'm recording on my laptop with a microphone attached to my t-shirt and a ring light in the corner, and that is it. I'm sat in my office, even now, 150 episodes in. You don't need a fancy kit. You don't need a team. I didn't have a team. I don't have a team. It's just me. And I didn't have any idea how many people would listen. I think when I first looked at the podcast properly, I was like, okay, so if I can get, 10 listeners, I'll be really happy. I just knew that if it helped one business owner feel less stuck or less alone, it was worth doing. What surprised me most wasn't that people listened, it's that they stayed. We're 150 episodes in. We are over 40,000 impressions on YouTube in the last year alone. We have upwards of 3,000 downloads on podcast platforms. People are watching and they're listening, and I'm making an impact in their businesses, which is all I really wanted to do. And I'm hoping that they stay because I never tried to be anything I wasn't. I was always honest. I was always open. And I hope that that honesty and transparency is the reason why people stay and listen. It's definitely not because of my northern accent. I'm hoping people are staying because it's not about hype or hacks, and it's talking about real businesses and real humans on that messy journey. Not look at me, I've made 7 figures and this is how I did it 10 years ago. I am in the trenches with you. I am building a business alongside you, and I hope that comes across. Now, over time, things evolved. Video came later, YouTube followed, but the format stayed short and intentional. And I think that's really important to me, is that these stay short, sharp, and actionable. I think the longest episode we've ever done is 20 minutes. Sometimes they're not even 10 minutes, because the information that you need doesn't need to be padded out with waffle, doesn't need to be spread over 20 episodes. Like, this is intentional, short, sharp, whether it's the latest news and the changes you need to know about, whether it's my experience as a business owner, whether it's an area of business that I also need support with. Go back and listen to the episodes with Zoe Jew. She gave me so much insight and helped me build my business. So I am literally alongside you building a better business. And that was the whole premise of this podcast. Now, again, if you're new to this, you probably won't know this, but I'm a big data nerd. I love data because it helps make informed decisions in business, whether that's your finance numbers, your reach numbers, or anything in between. And obviously getting to episode 150 meant I got to look back, and I do it at the end of every year anyway. And the numbers matter, but not because they impress, but because they show consistency. We're over 3,000 downloads across podcast platforms and counting, and over 40,000 impressions on YouTube in the last year. Now, that didn't happen overnight. It happened because I show up every Thursday, 6 a.m. on podcast platforms, 8 a.m. on YouTube, week after week, even when it felt like I was screaming into the void and nobody was listening. I also have no ad spend. I have no real marketing channels for this. This is the heart of the podcast. It's all about business owners like you. It's all about the humans behind the business. And it's about clear conversations that actually make a difference. And I think that matters now in this world more than ever, because we're in a time right now where you need to hook someone in the first 3 seconds of your social media reel. We want short, sharp, and actionable. We don't want to sit around for fluff for hours on end. If you're listening to this or watching it and you've been sitting on an idea, waiting for confidence, waiting for the right moment, or waiting for things to feel perfect, that this is your reminder. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect. You just need to get started. That's how this podcast started, and that's why it still exists today. And I never thought I would be here when we were back at episode 1 on my sofa, episode 150, building a bespoke podcast area to start leveling up this podcast even further. So before I finish, I want to say thank you to the listeners who have been here from the early audio-only days. There's listeners such as Mahul and Kirsty who often drop me a message on social media and let me know they've been listening, and that means absolute world. To the guests who trusted me with their stories, I love the fact that we have a real mix of myself, solo episodes like this, and guests on here, other experts who really help us all build better businesses. And to the people who message after an episode saying, that really helped, or thank you for that, or I didn't know you could do that, you are the reason that this podcast keeps going. Now, looking ahead, I'd love to know what you want more of. What topics do you want to cover? What conversations do you want to hear? What guests do you want to see? Or are there questions that you want answering? This podcast has always been shaped by the people listening to it, and I want that to continue way past 150 episodes. If you're watching on YouTube, please do like, rate and review, hit that notification bell, subscribe so that you know when new episodes of the 3Bs podcast go live. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, if you could take just 30 seconds to hit that 5-star review, I'd be so grateful, because that helps this podcast reach more business owners. And that brings me to the end of episode 150 of the 3Bs podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening, watching, and getting involved. And I will see you next week for the next episode of the 3Bs podcast. Bye. And that brings us to the end of another episode of the 3Bs podcast. I hope you found it useful and that you're walking away with some motivation, inspiration, or education to help you build a better business. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and of course connect with us on social media for more insights, tips, and behind the scenes content. Your next step in building a better business is just a click away. I can't wait to connect with you, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.